Bienvenidos and welcome back to Puro Pinche Gol, the podcast where we discuss all things USMNT y la Seleccionmexicana. My name is Adrian. I'm joined once again by my co-host and Tocayo rocking a badass Tigres 90s jersey here. Adrian, how are you, man?
Hey, what's up, dude? Always nice to be back here with you. How you doing?
Man, I'm ready, man. I'm ready to have Adrian unfiltered, uncensored, just going off today. I know you're ready to be unleashed for this episode. This has been an episode that you and I have been wanting to do for a while, and we know a lot of people have been wanting to listen on our take on this. So before we get into
hmm
episode 9, Mexico's worst enemy, Liga MX, I want to go ahead and tell you guys, if you haven't, so go ahead and check out our previous episode. We had our Liga MX 2023 Clausura preview, kind of going over the teams to watch, players to watch, both U.S. players in Liga MX, which granted is not a lot, and Seleccionmexicana players in Liga MX. We also gave our preview of some key USMNT and L3 players in Europe, as the European season has now kicked off and is in full swing. So if you missed that episode, be sure to go check it out. Before we unleash you, Adrian, take off the chains. Where can our listeners find us?
If our listeners want to see our pretty faces, they can find us on YouTube. So make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. If they're okay with just listening to our beautiful voices, they can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast service they're subscribers on.
Awesome. Yeah, so again, this is episode 9. We're going to be discussing the politics, the intricacies of the league, Liga MX, which prevent the Mexican Football Federation and Mexican football, as a whole from growing and really reaching its full potential. Let's just get into it, man. I'm ready to hear your thoughts. Topic 1, Liga MX. We've kind of discussed, off the radar here. I mean, off the mic, how Liga MX has kind of done its own thing here for the past, I know, definitely last 10 years,
Yeah.
more so the past 5 years, kind of distancing itself
Mhm.
from other South American Latin leagues, especially in CONMEBOL. They used to be, participants in Copa Libertadores and do really well in there. And now it looks like they're kind of leaning towards partnership and partnering more so with MLS. Um, what can you tell us about the relationship with South American club competitions and how that's been going on and developing here the last couple of years?
Sure, definitely. But before I get into the I guess the deep or the depth of this specific topic, I do want to say one thing that I found interesting while I was doing some research yesterday. It looks like Tata Martino released his report on his time as
Yeah.
the national coach, and one of the things that he was saying is that he complained a lot about Liga MX and how Liga MX wasn't competitive enough, and he was saying a bunch of stuff that neither here nor there, probably for a different episode. But needless to say, this is a guy who was reluctant to move to Mexico to see Liga MX because of all of these things that he said, that it wasn't competitive, it wasn't good enough, blah blah blah. Yet 60% or 70% of his roster came from Liga MX. So fuck Tata Martino to begin with. For dissing Liga MX, we know it's not perfect, but it's fun to watch. Now that I said that, yeah. So Liga MX, as you said, for the last several years, has been very close to MLS and very far from CONMEBOL and any other leagues around in South America. Or CONMEBOL isn't a league; it's the confederation. But you get my point. So muy lejos de CONMEBOL, pero extremadamente cerca de la MLS. Um, so I guess let's go, step by step in here. In 2017, Liga MX decided to stop participating in South American club competitions, and the reason why they did that, it's because they cited scheduling conflicts, meaning that when the next round of games in Copa Libertadores were to happen, on that specific period of time of the year, Liga MX clubs were either on preseason or taking a vacation from the most recent season that just ended. And so that's something that we will talk through this specific topic, as far as looking at the Liga MX scheduling and tournament format. But the purpose of touching on Liga MX is how Liga MX changes have impacted El Tri's chances of moving on or becoming a better team on the world stage. So because of that, not only because of the conflict with Liga MX's own schedule, Copa Libertadores and Copa Sudamericanas games also conflicted with CONCACHAFA's season, or I guess schedule. So Mexico or Liga MX being part of the CONCACAF uh, confederation, right? They are bound to participate on these tournaments. So whether they like it or not, they have to be there. And I think it isn't a situation of they don't like it. I think they like it because it is an easier path to get to the World Club,
Club World Cup, yeah.
World Championship, World Cup, or what? Yeah, World Club, World Cup. And that makes that gives him a little money. So I don't necessarily think it's a situation of money because the Concachafa doesn't give him it doesn't have like big prize money,
Right.
big money prizes. Conmebol does. Like I think I found something saying that every single Copa Libertadores game, each team makes like around like if you I don't know if you advance for every single game, but you make something around $1 million per game that you play, something like that. So it is definitely not a money wise situation, but it is more of a it's easier for them to get to a I guess international stage through CONCACAF. So in addition to that as well, not only focusing on removing Liga MX from CONMEBOL, they also saw something that I think we all knew it was bound to happen just because of the nature of the wall migration or immigration happening between Mexico and the United States. And so it's not a lie. It's a big true that there's a huge community of Mexicans in the United States. So Liga MX realized that and understood that if they wanted to make more money, the actual goal was to penetrate the American market. So over the last couple of years, Liga MX has focused on strengthening its relationship with MLS. Now, regardless if this relationship makes Liga MX more competitive or not, the teams are making way, 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 way more money by playing against the likes of DC United, LAFC, LA Galaxy on these odd tournaments than going and participating in CONMEBOL club championships. So again, just to give you some perspective, right? I think Los Angeles is the city outside of Mexico with the most Mexicans in it. just just so you know how big
The
of a
city
market they
outside
can
of Mexico, Mexico City, or the city outside of Mexico, the country.
outside of Mexico, the country.
Yeah.
So it's I think it has more Mexicans than and look, don't quote me on this. Do your own research, right? But I read somewhere. I read somewhere saying that if it isn't uh, I guess the city outside of Mexico or Mexico City that has the most Mexicans, um, it is around there. I don't know if it has more Mexicans than Monterrey or if it has more Mexicans
Guadalajara.
than Guadalajara. But Monterrey has what, maybe 4 million, and not all of them are Mexicans. But you can say that at least 99.8% of them are Mexicans, and
Right.
I think Guadalajara has like 3 or 4 million. So I wouldn't be surprised if Los Angeles has 4 million, 5 million Mexicans living there. So now, if they count Mexican Americans as Mexicans, that's not up to me. I'm just giving you some sort of quasi facts, some pseudo facts over here. So don't call me on this one, but that's something that is happening, man. And as I said, it isn't necessarily a situation of them trying to be more competitive. It's a situation of La Liga MX wants to be a rich league. They don't care about competition. They don't really are focused on making teams better. They are only focused on making more money. And like I understand that it's a business, right? They have to look after their investors. They have to look after the owner of the team, whatever economical goals they have. But this move, this focus, this goal it's motivated by dollars and not necessarily by player growth or improved performance, or becoming a cedar league for a better cedar league for El Tri, which, as I said, 70% of the national team comes from Liga MX.
Before you advance and move
Mhm.
on, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to clarify a couple
No,
of
no,
things.
go for it, man. Yeah.
For our listeners that aren't aware what CONCACHAFA is, that's the Champions League, the CONCACAF Champions League, and also another reason that we've seen Liga MX kind of stray away from Copa Sudamericana, from the Copa Libertadores, from the Copa America, which we'll get into later in this episode.
Mhm.
Um, Gold Cup and CONCACAF and the federation here kind of a couple years, probably not a couple years, 10 years ago, kind of got upset. Same with CONMEBOL, that Mexico, USA, and Mexico more so, because Mexico was always the one that participated more in CONMEBOL, would not be sending their A teams to Copa America, was not sending their A teams to Sudamericana or to Libertadores, and vice versa, was not sending their A teams to CONCACHAFA, because they were
Mhm.
focusing so much on the Libertadores. Um, so that's kind of I want to say the primary reason, but it did leave a sour note in between the two confederations, and for a while, obviously Mexico has to side with their federation. Um, so I know that was one of the reasons that Mexico has kind of strayed away. But yeah, obviously the biggest reason being what you mentioned, money, moolah.
Yeah, and the biggest example of this transition is the Leagues Cup, right? The Leagues Cup started as a very short tournament that happened like in between games of Liga MX, and I think the preseason of MLS. It involved maybe like 6 teams, and every single year that they increase the number of teams up to the point that I think in this year, the Leagues Cup is going to happen, and it will involve all 18 teams from Liga MX and the 29 franchises from MLS. I don't have a clue as to what other money prices in here, but that just goes to show you that the plan in the long term is to either combine Liga MX with
Mm-hmm.
MLS, because that's the next step for the I guess the
Mm-hmm.
La Junta de Dueños,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of like making money, um, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't like I don't want to touch MLS in this episode because we're not talking about MLS. We'll discuss that on a different episode. But I just I'm perplexed to to see these kind of decisions being made. Because you're not looking after the benefit of your own league. You're looking after your own pockets, right?
Yeah, and this has been something that's been in development probably for 20 years now. If we remember back to the 2005, 2006 time, you remember the Superliga?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of when it kind of the relationship really started getting and growing between the MLS and Liga MX. And now, man, I'm looking at this Leagues Cup. It's insane. 77 games hosted, and like you said, it's all about money, because all the games are in the US and Canada, where they could charge dollars. There's not going to go play in
Mm-hmm.
Monterrey and Mexico and Guadalajara, where they charge pesos to go see, DC United versus Guadalajara or something. They know they'll make money in the States. And yeah, they're really trying to push this 3 CONCACAF Champions League spots for the top 3 teams of that Leagues Cup. But yeah, we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man,
You know, th- and you know what's the most fucked up part of this, Adrian? It's that they claim to do this so they are closer to all the paisanos, right? And that's all nice and dandy, and that's a great speech if you want to believe it. But the truth is, they see el paisano as a freaking wallet. They know that the paisano is gonna spend $150 on a freaking shitty ticket to see Guadalajara, to see America, to see Leon. Hell, I mean, I would pay $100 to see Tigres. I pay $90 to see freaking Tigres against Austin FC 2 years
yeah,
ago.
we've done it. Yep. Hmm.
So exactly, like it's and it's messed up because not only they're taking advantage of us who have been living out of our country for the long time, and we yearn those kind of moments where we can go and see things that makes us feel closer to our home. But they bring they don't put the starting players. They don't
Right.
put the stars to play. When I saw freaking Tigres against Austin FC 2 years ago, um, Gignac wasn't playing. Florian Thauvin wasn't playing. They had like a bunch of youngsters, which I'm not complaining. It isn't a complaint, but I'm not paying $100 to see David Fierro. I'm not paying $100 to see freaking Jesus Garza. I'm paying $100 to see Gignac, to see Nahuel, to see Carioca, to see all
Right.
the big stars, right?
Right.
So it's just it's a freaking it's a kick in the throat, man. That's what it is. And it pisses me off because they're taking advantage of us, and also they're also harming and hindering El Tri's aspirations for performance growth. So goddamn, dude.
Yeah. We could spend hours talking about this, but how is the moving more so not necessarily to Liga MX and MLS, the relationship and how they play here, but more so looking at Liga MX as a whole in Mexico. When they're in the league, when they're in Liga, there's been a lot of changes. In the last 5 years, even they got rid of
Hmm.
promotion, they got rid of relegation. Um,
Yes.
so what does this mean for the league? Obviously, here in MLS, there's in the states, there's no promotion relegation. The fans of that league have kind of gotten used to it. But in Mexico, that was never the case. Do you think this has affected
Yep.
teams' performance? Have they become more complacent? What do you think?
Definitely. So to understand this specific change, right, we have to, do a quick uh, flash to the past, where Liga MX used to be a year-long calendar, right, tournament, where I think it was up to maybe 98 or 99 that was the case. Then they decided to shift the format and start having like a playoff, so an off season, or I guess playoff season, where the
Right.
best 8 teams classified to the next round, and then we had quarterfinals, semifinals, and the final. And that has been the case for the last 20 years of Liga MX existence. During the pandemic, they made it. Well, I'm not sure if it was before or during the pandemic, but it was around that time they decided to go away from relegation and promotion, citing that most of the teams who were or who had the chance to get promoted into Liga MX top flight were at the breach of or at the edge of bankruptcy. So they say, look, even if they win the championship to get promoted, they're not gonna last a year in Liga MX because they don't have enough investment money. They don't have the resources to just pay the fees of being part of Liga MX, which is I think around 25 million pesos. Um, so
And
that
just to,
was
just
like
to
the
clarify
skews.
real quick, it happened April 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. So that
Yeah.
between what you're saying and the pandemic, yeah, that factored into it for sure.
So there were a bunch of excuses, but the biggest one was that one, and of course the pandemic, saying like, well, each team is going through a rough patch, which that's partly true. Um, but I think it was also a push from teams like Chivas, who they've been playing like trash for the
Right.
last eight
Hmm.
years or even more, and they were on the edge of relegation. Not so long before the pandemic
Hmm.
started, where they were the biggest proponents of getting rid of relegation because Chivas had never been relegated. I think it's the only team in Liga MX who had, maybe America, but I know Chivas had never been relegated from Liga MX. So not only they got rid of relegation and promotion, they also increased the number of teams that make it to the playoffs. So I guess uh, for those that don't really know about Liga MX, it's like when you have um, the wild card games on an NFL. You have this
Right.
thing called repechaje,
Hmm.
and teams between the fifth to the 12th on the classification make it to this wild card game, and the four winners out of that wild card games make it to the next round of playoffs. So that was also another excuse, saying like, well, we understand that Liguilla makes money, and that's the whole reason why we have a Liguilla, a playoff season,
And a
because
whole reason why
they
there's two
they
short tournaments instead of one.
exactly, because they realize they can make way more money with this kind of format than just having a year long tournament. So nowadays, teams can pretty much lay back and make at least 15 points, and they can make it. They can make it to the next round of Liguilla, and they have a shot to be the champion, dude.
Right.
So this has a huge impact on the performance on every single team.
Yeah. And if they don't reach that 15 point, if they say get 3 points for the whole season, three ties or whatever, there's no worries. They won't go down. They
Exactly.
they just become complacent. Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean, there's like a fee that you have to pay if you are on the bottom three, or I guess on the you're one of the last three teams on the on the, I guess, point wise for a year. You have to
Okay.
pay a fee to, I guess, still be considered part of Liga MX, which I think the highest one is 60 million pesos.
Oh, I didn't know
If you're
that.
the
But I
team
mean,
with the low.
still, that fee is nothing compared to being relegated and losing sponsorship deals, losing television
I
deals,
agree.
losing
Yeah.
ticket deals. I mean, that's a walk in the park. I'd pay that any day.
And so, I guess there's an argument saying like, well, this gives a shot to smaller teams to the championship, right? And they can make money out of, becoming champions. But at the same time, it hinders the production or the development of talent, because now bigger teams, they don't only get complacent in the sense of, I don't have to do anything because I'm not gonna get relegated. So it doesn't really matter if I don't make it to Liguilla. I just don't have to be on the last three, or even if I'm on the last three for the year, I've just got to pay a fee and that's it, right? The thing is that now teams are under a lot of pressure to ensure they classify either on the top four or at least make it to Liguilla. Which, if you are a coach of a team like, for example, Tigres, right, and you are under a lot of pressure from the fans, and you have to be performed because you're a competitive team, if
Hmm.
you're the coach of Tigres, you're not gonna be looking at your academy and trying to, bring young talent up to the first team and
Right.
put your name and your job on the edge, on the floor, by, putting youngsters out there. So you're gonna be looking out for the best talent. You're gonna be looking out for the best foreigners. You're gonna be looking out for the best Mexicans out there. So forget about developing young talent. It's all about having the best team available and winning championships in the short term. So screw El Tri, screw the national team, because I don't really care. The only thing that I
Yeah.
have to do is I have to win.
Yeah, screw the development of youth players. I'll go to Argentina, buy me a 25-year-old that's proven or I'll go to, a random, Central American country, buy somebody. And yeah, the who suffers here is the youth Mexican prospects that don't get the chance, which ultimately reflects on the national team, and which is why we
Yeah,
see sometimes on the national team like Funes Mori, some players that aren't even from this country playing for them. A or B, how we saw this last year, nothing but old farts. There's nobody
yeah,
coming in to replace these guys.
and there's no like solution in the short term either. And to be fair, like, it's not only the Liga MX fault that we don't have a lot of young development. There's also, a situation of the actual idiosyncrasy of the player, of the Mexican player, and the culture of the Mexican player, which we will touch on this topic in the next few minutes. But it's just a situation that it's very short sighted, I guess, short minded, short sighted. It's not, it isn't necessarily taking a big picture of the, I guess, is not understanding the big picture of its impact, right? How
Right.
much of an effect it has on the development of El Tri. And, speaking of youth development, it's also it's not a lie that Liga MX isn't necessarily a league that is concerned about making or developing young talent, even though it has the system in place to think that you can become like a cedar league for Europe, right?
Hmm.
Because they do have under 13s, they have under 15s, they have under 17s, under 20s, and I think under 23s, and then of
Hmm.
course the first team, right?
Right.
So the system is out there, but La Liga MX is not incentivizing teams to develop young talent. And most of the teams in Mexico haven't realized that they can make big bucks by selling players. They are still thinking, using the old model of, I have to sell tickets, I have to sell shirts, and I have
Right.
to make sponsorship deals. And there's only like two or three teams who have realized this and do it in a very good way, which is Santos, Pachuca, and arguably Monterrey. Um, so it's a situation where you only have three teams out of 18 who are actually concerned or thinking in the future and saying, all right, I have to change my business model, and not only in the benefit of the national team, but also in the benefit of my own bank account, right?
Right. And if you're one of those young prospects, like we've talked about the big teams, America, Tigres, Monterrey, not really, because like you said, to the extent they develop and they sell, but those other big teams that really don't play the long game. They go, they buy their players from foreign players, or they buy the best Mexican players available. As a youth prospect, if I'm coming up, I have one or two good seasons with, let's say, a León, or let's say um, Querétaro or somebody, right? A smaller market team. What what's the mentality of the youth player if they're approached by, say, a European team in Belgica, Belgium, or something, versus one of the giants in Mexico? What does the youth player at that age, or at that stage, what are they looking at? They're looking at the, hey man, I could go to Belgium and get better competition, man. I'll go to Tigres and live in Monterrey, make a lot of money, be one of, a star here. What is the mentality there in the youth player?
So, unfortunately, most recently in the last few years, we have seen the mentality of the Mexican player go down in the path of, I'm doing this because of money. And it isn't necessarily a situation of I want to become a better soccer player, a better football player. It's I want to make the most money I can, and I understand them because most of them come from very humble beginnings, right? So the fact is that they probably won't see that amount of money in their life. Being in front of them, like this is going to be the one chance of them to make, I don't know, $1 million a year, because they know that, and they realize that if they go to Belgium, right, if they go to Belgium, if they go to a small team in Spain, if they go to small team in Italy, if they go to play, I don't know, even in Poland, dude, like in Switzerland, Poland, Belgium, Portugal, like it doesn't really matter which country in Europe, they're not going to be making the same amount of money as if they get purchased by America, by Tigres, by Monterrey, by even Chivas. And so it's a situation of, you know uh, they 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 see a huge amount, they see a huge check, and it's like, all right, why would I put myself in a position where I have to work my ass off, right, and be constantly competing against
The best players in the
crazy
world.
talent,
Hmm.
best players in the world, for a spot in a team where I'm not even guaranteed that I'm gonna make, that it's gonna be like my stepping stone into the next stage of my career, when I can just be here in Liga MX, continue to be a rock star, move into a city that will offer me, a better life standard, which is, I guess, equitable to what you can be offered in Europe, albeit there's a lot of differences, but I'm gonna be making $2 million a year, right?
Where if
Like,
I go to Belgium, I'll
why
be
would I?
making 500K, and I'll be
Yeah,
non-starter maybe, and I might get relegated. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I might be, sitting on the bench. I might not even get called up for a game every single week. I might be playing only with the sub 20s, or I might just be playing, every now and then on a cup game. Um, they don't really understand the situation of when you go to Europe, right? And even if you're not a starting 11 or a starting player, and you're, coming off the bench, you're subbing, by just training every single day with that team with better
Hmm.
talent than yourself, right, by being
Right.
exposed to that specific competition, you become a better player. And so if in the next 2 years you're unable to consolidate your career in Europe, right, and you want to see better, other options so you can have more game time, you can always come back to Mexico or MLS, and you're gonna make a lot of money
Yeah.
because they're going to be willing to pay you that much, because there's certain scarcity of good Mexican talent, and Liga MX is yearning for that.
Yeah, before we dive too much into the Mexican player archetype, I know we really wanted to focus on the why is there such a big money transfers for the Mexican player? Why is the Mexican players so overvalued?
So here's the situation. All right, Liga MX is it's a niche market, meaning that it's like its own economy. It doesn't really It doesn't really care about what's going on outside of Liga MX. They don't really mind how the South American leagues are doing. They are only focused on them and their own market. So before, a couple of years ago, Liga MX used to have this rule. Well, they require teams to have a youngster who was 20 years and 11 months old or younger to be part of the first team, and they had to play an X amount of minutes. Right? They went away with that rule because of the pandemic, and nowadays the Liga MX requires each team to not have more than 10 foreign players, and teams can only have 8 players at all time on the pitch. Right? So they
Foreign
can have
players.
yeah, foreign players. So they are pretty much pushing all sides to have at least 3 Mexican players on the team at all times. So given said that, right? If you're looking to be the best team in Liga MX, you want to have the best talent, and if you have 3 Mexican spots that you need to fill, right, you're gonna be looking for the best Mexican player on that specific position. So understanding that Mexico has a scarcity of good talent of national players, right? There are very few players who can actually who actually have talent, who actually have a good performance that you can buy,
Right.
right? So if you are Monterrey and you're in the most recent example, right? And it wasn't a big transfer, but it is a big transfer for the experience this player has and its potential. So
Hmm.
Monterrey let go of Cesar Montes to Espanyol, and now he has a center back position that they need to fill. They cannot go out. They cannot go to a foreign league and get a foreign player because they have already the 10 foreign players on their squad. So they need to get a Mexican player. Now, if they look around, they only had a handful of options. One of them was Israel Reyes, who actually went to America. The other one is Victor Guzman, who is the most recent purchase. Uh, they purchased Victor Guzman for $3 million dollars. Victor Guzman is a 20-year-old player with 65 games on his under his belt. Let me say that again. It's a 20-year-old player with only 65 games under his belt.
Yeah.
If he was an Argentinian player, those are poor names. If it was those are poor numbers. If it was a Brazilian player, poor numbers. If it was an Uruguayan player, poor numbers. So it's a situation where you don't have that much of that big of a catalog to get players from, right?
Right.
Because it's either that or you bring someone from your academy. But if you are Rayados coach, you're like, hell no,
I'm not going to
I'm not
risk
gonna
that.
risk exactly. I'm not gonna risk it. So I'm just gonna go out there, pull out my wallet, and purchase the next best talent that I can find. And Cholos is like, all right, this player is value at $900,000, but Monterrey is willing to pay me 3 million. Dude, take it. And that happens pretty often. Like if you look on the latest Chivas transfers, right, which is the only team in Liga MX that plays with nothing but Mexicans. The most expensive transfer they've done in the last 8 years was Rodolfo Pizarro from Pachuca, and they spent roughly 15 million euros on him at an age of 22.
Jeez. Right.
Can you think of a European team coming to Pachuca and saying, "Look, I'm going to give you 15 million euros for a 22-year-old,
Yeah,
for a Mexican 22-year-old?"
they price out all the European teams, which
Exactly.
is
So
yeah. Go for it. Sorry.
the conversation, no, it's all right. The conversation now, it's a situation of, if I'm a Mexican team with the next exciting Mexican talent, right, and I have America offering me 10 million euros, and I have Sevilla giving me 2 million euros, it's a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah, you'd be an idiot not to. Yeah, I mean it's a business.
Exactly.
Right.
And the thing is that pundits in Mexico like to blast teams like Tigres or Monterrey or America, saying like, well, they hinder the ability of Mexican young talent to go to Europe because they pay this pricey uh,
Overvalued.
they pay overvalued players, right? They have the money to do it.
Right.
So but the reality is that it isn't Tigres' fault. It isn't Monterrey's fault. It's a bigger problem where everything is motivated by money. By, I want to make the most I can, instead of thinking of how is this going to impact the national team in the long run. Because Liga MX is decoupled from the growth of El Tri.
Yeah, and I think they're really, they're supposed to work hand in hand, side by side, right? Liga MX and la Selección Mexicana. One is supposed to feed off the other. The other is supposed to see dividends from the other. But at this time, it feels like it's just completely, Liga MX is doing his own thing. El Tri is trying to survive with little resources and talent. Liga MX
Yeah.
is producing for them. Um, but yeah, man, I mean, Liga MX is just at this point, with all the decisions they've made in the last 5 years. I mean, granted, some were for because of the pandemic. Looking out for itself, which it should be. You don't want the league to crack and go under, and but it's all money related for sure, and just that it's just insane how your youth suffers because of that rule that or not the rule, but eight foreigners can be starting on your team and only three Mexican. That's crazy. I mean, I know you have a list here that you want to kind of share with us where it shows some of Chivas's most recent transfers, and all their, for the most part, they all come from I guess their most expensive transfers, I guess, they all come from Liga MX. It's Chivas buying
Liga MX, yeah.
Mexican talent
Mhm.
from the smaller teams.
Yeah.
Yep.
And pretty much all of them are above 5 million euros, which is a lot of money for a young Mexican player. Like I think it's crazy to think that the likes of Olympiacos, the likes of Club Brugge, Genk, Port. Well, maybe Porto not, but I don't know. Club Sporting Braga, Espanyol, Albacete, Almeria. Mallorca. I don't think they're willing to pay that much money for a Mexican player because on at least on the last 10 years it's been difficult for the Mexican player to make a breakthrough in Europe, and we don't have enough consolidated players out there for teams to make to take a chance on Mexican nationals.
Right.
And the most recent example of this specific situation, man, is what happened to Uriel Antuna. So Uriel Antuna got purchased by Chivas in 2020 from Man City for around 10 million euros, and then he got sold to Cruz Azul for, I think, maybe around 6 to 7 million dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And just most recently, Panathinaikos from Greece
Mm-hmm.
was asking for Will Antuna, and they were pushing for him, but I think they were only willing to offer somewhere around 5 million euros for him. And Cruz Azul said no, because Cruz Azul was like, "Look, I pay 7 million for this guy. Why would I take an offer for less money? And on top of that, I have to pay Chivas a percentage of that sale."
Right.
And they just blocked the transfer because of that. And nowadays, it's well known in Liga MX that young Mexican talent have two release clauses, one from Europe and one for Liga MX clubs. And the Liga MX club release clauses are higher, like
Right.
significantly higher, like at least double.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, if they're gonna sell it to an in league rival, they're gonna make bank off of it.
Exactly. And Jurgen Damm went to Tigres from Pachuca for like almost 9 million euros. Freaking Jurgen Damm, dude. A fucking guy, dude.
He was
He's
living in
some
Monterrey, playing golf, just living the life, bro.
living it up, dude. Living it up.
Uh,
And so that this is how Liga MX is hindering El Tri's aspirations to become a better team. And then again, it's not all Liga MX's fault, right? Femexfut has done or has made some debatable choices in the last couple of years, but it is also a very well known fact that uh, Mexico is a national team that uses its local league as its basis for uh, for national squads. So if you're gonna have a team that builds from or feeds from your local league, then you better make sure that your league is thinking or at least trying to set up the national team for success, right?
yeah, I think it was like in the World Cup, and don't quote me on this. I think it was like England, outside the top five, England, Portugal, yeah,
Spain, maybe.
Spain, and Germany, and Mexico. Those were the top five countries that had most of their players coming from their league. You know, normally you look at Brazil, no one on that team is from their league, maybe except one or two players. Argentina, same
Yeah.
thing. They're all in Europe.
Hmm.
Even the U.S. team, most of their players were Europe. Um, Costa Rica, maybe another one that was kind of like 50-50, I think. But a lot of their players, they're in smaller teams in Europe. But it was Mexico had like, I think it was like 70-80% of the roster, probably not that much, but a good chunk was, Liga MX based. And we've talked about that. Kind of leads into this next topic. The two pillars, obviously, Liga MX, but the other pillar is la Femexfut, la Seleccionmexicana. Um,
Yeah.
they seem to do a lot of matches outside of Mexico, a lot of friendlies, especially here in the United States. They've gotten out of their, like we mentioned, Sudamericana, Libertadores. For the national side, Copa America, they don't really participate in that anymore. I think that'll change here in the next Copa America that's going to be held in the United States. So they'll be in that one. But other than that, it's been a while since we've seen them in Copa America. Um,
Yeah. It's been
why?
a while.
You gave me a crazy stat the other day that Mexico is one of the top three nations, team nations, or that earner money wise, revenue wise, one of the top
Yeah.
three. I think second to Brazil and second to third to I don't know who else, but it's one of those other big teams. That's crazy. Um, why is it that they they're such good earners, but they don't play in Mexico. They play most of their games here in the states,
Hmm.
and how has that really affected them from a national team side?
Yeah. So, I gave you that stat because that's something that you normally hear on, that's something that Mexican pundits like to mention. And you've seen players like Chicharito also mentioning, saying, like, hey, the national team, El Tri, is one of the top five earners in the world. And, and we have yet to see the impact of that money in the benefit of the national team, right? And so here's the situation. There's very few national teams that have that they can consider to have two home turfs. One of them is Turkey whenever they play in Germany,
Hmm.
and the other one is Mexico when they play in the United States.
Right.
So I think there's maybe Boston, perhaps Seattle, and maybe Salt Lake City, where
I
if
think
Mexico
Ohio,
were,
USA always
yeah,
plays in
Ohio
Ohio
too,
against Mexico for that reason.
and those are the four maybe states or stadiums where Mexico might not be considered home turf.
Right.
But if you go to Texas, if you go to California, if you go to Colorado, if you go to Arizona, Florida, they're gonna be playing as the home team for
Right.
sure. So Liga, just like Liga MX, Femexfut understood this, but they understood this at an earlier stage than Liga MX, and they realized that they don't only have to be bound to those FIFA international official friendlies. They can actually have more unofficial friendlies and play them all in the United States. They sign a contract with this company called Soccer United Marketing, and that's the company that has the rights of El Tri's games in the states. And I don't know when, but since the very beginning of this contract, they are bound to play 5 games every single year in the U.S. And one of them has to be in Dallas, just because I'm not sure if El Tri or Zoom have a legal agreement with the government of Texas to play at the Cowboys Stadium at least once every single year. Um, so this contract extension goes all the way to 2028, which it's allegedly it will make El Tri around $200 million between 2022 and 2026.
Jeez.
So that's a lot of money. This means that Femex Food takes to their bank account $2 million per game.
Wow.
So
Yeah, and
and
those
that's
aren't even official matches. Those are friendlies.
exactly, those are like unofficial friendlies. The friendlies that they play against freaking Guadalupe, and what they play
Suriname.
against freaking
Yeah,
yeah, Suriname, Honduras. Like if you're lucky, they might play it against some uh middle team, middle of the table team in Europe, like Serbia or Poland, or
right,
if you're very, very, very lucky, you might see Argentina, you might see like a Colombia, Uruguay. But the thing is that even though they have this many games through the year, and I'm not too sure if it's one of the national teams with the most games throughout the year, but uh, the thing is that these are unofficial friendlies, and if they want to get if they want to clash against top teams, it's difficult because every single year Europe closes its doors not only to Mexico but pretty much to the rest of the world that is in Brazil or Argentina, or like a powerhouse in South America like Uruguay,
right.
because they do have a tight schedule to begin with, but Femexfut hasn't done its homework to lure or increase their network in Europe, right? They're not willing to pay European sites for a game in Europe. They're not willing to travel to Europe because they're comfortable in the States playing against Suriname. And it's just, it's baffling to realize that Mexico has played more than 85 official matches in the US since 2002.
Yeah,
I
those
think
are
they
official FIFA matches. Those aren't the SUM Soccer United Marketing matches. So that's an average 85, more than 85 official matches since 2002. That's an average of more than 4 games per year official matches. Count the other 5 from SUM. They play at least 9 or 10 games a year in the states.
they play more in the States than they play in Mexico. Whenever you
How
have
does a
like the
Mexican
work.
fan feel about that?
Well, the thing is that the Mexican fan nowadays feels like they don't really care about about El Tri anymore. I don't know if you noticed, but in the most recent World Cup qualifiers, Mexico
Oh
plays
yeah,
only plays in El Azteca. It's very odd that they play somewhere else that is in Azteca.
right.
Um, and Azteca used to be a stronghold for the national team, and nowadays it's just like a walk in the park. Like you have Canada showing up, you have the US showing up, and they tie or beat you. Even freaking Costa Rica ties with you in Azteca because people don't go and they don't want to see you. They don't want to go and watch the Tri play. They don't care because they know that El Tri favors games in the US and rather have those matches out here than in Mexico. Plain and simple. It also it's compounded by the fact that nowadays El Tri is not only competing against other national teams, they're also competing against TikTok, they're competing against social media, they're competing against Netflix. So there's a lot of other things that people can do to entertain themselves rather than just watch El Tri, right?
Right.
Uh, but they are not doing anything to improve those numbers. They aren't doing anything to make the actual Mexican national who lives in Mexico to get enthused, to get to regain that passion to see El Tri play at Azteca. They're
Or
happy to come here
right.
and take the money from all the paisas.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you see Azteca, which used to be a stronghold, like you said, used to be packed to the brim every game. Now it's halfway, 3 quarters, but that's Azteca. I mean, when they play in Torreon, when they play in Monterrey, it's been probably 10 years since they played in Monterrey. Man, they don't. Not even half the stadium is full then. Because I mean, I guess
No,
the fans from Monterrey are like they'd rather go to the states. Did they never come here? Why should we care?
exactly. And in Monterrey is a very specific case because in Monterrey it's honestly people there they only care about Tigres or Rayados. They don't really care about El Tri. It's always a whenever there's a World Cup, yes, we'll join the rest of the country, but when it comes to like FIFA friendlies or even World Cup qualifiers, like Monterrey fans, not only Rayados fans, but Monterrey football fans in general,
Hmm.
see as a nuisance or as an annoying thing that we have, the FIFA breaks,
Mm.
because it's a
Takes away from
it's a
watching
couple of weeks.
Tigres or watching
Yeah,
Rayados.
and it's a couple of very slow weeks for the Tigres and Rayados fans out there in Monterrey. So, it's a compound of things, man. It's, the lack of, I guess, games in Mexico that are relevant. The fact that it's well known that Femexfut favors U.S. dollars than fostering, or I guess increasing the engagement of the Mexican fan in Mexico. And then on top of that, also all of the freaking drama that had, that every single time happens. That I just feel that the Mexican national fan in Mexico, uh, it's just indifferent nowadays. That's
Right.
the word that I was looking for.
And all that indifference, believe it or not, trickles down to the Mexican team. They're like, man, I mean, if the fans don't care, why should we? Which makes them play even worse, which we've seen. It's all compounded. It's all circles back to each other. It's all connected. And between what we talked about Liga MX, what we talked about La Selección, what we talked about the fan, it just for those reasons, La Selección is kind of in the rut, or probably the worst position they've been in the last 30, 40 years. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, just sad to
and
say.
yeah, and it's a situation that is not only, impacting the national team, but it's also impacting the Mexican player art, the Mexican player buildup. So the core of the Mexican player also gets impacted by these kind of decisions, by this kind of lack of engagement from either the fans, from from Femexfut, from Liga MX, and it's making the Mexican young players generations to be more uh, like whimsical in a way. They are very caprichosos, dude. Like,
Hmm.
um, and I think this will be a good segue to start talking about the Mexican player archetype, where the Mexican player nowadays is not only money driven, but it's also a situation where um I don't know if you pay close attention to every single interview of a young Mexican player that is, catching the press attention when they
Uh-huh.
ask him, hey, what are your goals? Immediately it's a, oh, I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Europe.
Right.
My goal is to go to Europe. And I don't think they take a step back and think of, do I really want to go to Europe because I want to become a better player, or I want to go to Europe. I think I want to go to Europe because that's what is expected of me. That's what everyone thinks that I need to do. And I want to get there so I can just check it off my list and move on. So
Right.
whether if I do a good job out there and I earn my spot in the team, or if I'm always benched and I don't do anything with my career in Europe, I just checked it off my list and I move on. I don't really care. I went to Europe. I'm done with this. I can come back to Liga MX. I can come back to MLS, and I can continue doing my career. So it's a situation that they are not seeing the big picture. They are not understanding the ramifications of them going to Europe and becoming better players out there. Um, and this is something that is very common nowadays in the young Mexican talent.
Yeah. I guess they feel that, society expects them to go out there, and they are entitled to go out there as being, the media hypes them up. They have one good Liga MX season at 19, 20 years old. They're hyped up. They
Yeah.
see their evaluation, their overvalued price tag. And yeah, I mean, they just go out there to kind of, like you said, check it off their list, be able to say, I'm one of the Mexican players of history that played in Europe. No matter if they played like shit in Europe, or if they were always benched in Europe, they're one of those. They followed in the footsteps of Rafa Marquez, of Hugo Sanchez, of the greats that were out there, Pavel Pardo, those guys that cleared the way for the new generation to be respected in Europe and to go to Europe. But yeah, they're just not good enough. A, to go make that move yet, or they just don't care enough to they may have had one good season to go out there, but they can't be bothered to continue that. It's just like you said, a checklist in their book.
Exactly. And you know what pisses me the most off is that, what we discussed about Liga MX, what we said about El Tri, um, it all adds up and makes the Mexican player, as you said, to feel entitled not only to go to Europe, but they feel entitled to go to the big teams in Europe.
Right.
So it's situation of, oh well, why would I want to leave, America or Chivas or hell even Cholos, dude? Like, why would I want to leave Liga MX to go and play for freaking, I don't know, uh Standard de Lieja or uh Nantes or freaking Cremonese, Hellas Verona. Why would I do that? you know
Right.
as you said, the press and their overvalue makes them think that they are worth X amount of money or worth X amount of, I guess,
Prestige
they
team
feel like
wise.
prestige. Exactly.
Yeah.
That, if Barcelona, if Liverpool, if Chelsea, if Real Madrid are not, Bayern Munich are not coming for me, then why would I go to Europe? Right? You told me just, a couple of days ago about Jesus Gallardo saying that, playing in Monterrey is like playing in Europe.
Yep.
How? Like,
Right.
tell me, dude, how?
Yeah, man. I don't know what he's smoking.
Well, how is, playing in Rayados the same as playing in Sevilla
Right.
or playing in Valencia, right? It isn't.
Hmm.
And then you have motherfuckers like Luis Vega, sorry, not Luis Vega, Alexis Vega saying that, oh, why would I want to go to Europe and be pressured to play for 6 months and then, not meet expectations and come back home?
Yeah, let
Well,
me tell you Jesus Gallardo's exact quote here. I'm translating for Spanish, so if I take a while to say that, I'm happy to be at Rayados. It's almost like being in it's like being in a European team. It has the installations and training facilities that are beautiful, the beautiful stadium, the fans, everything is incredible here. Yeah, I mean, he literally said that playing Liga MX is like playing in Europe. So
how? Like, I really want to give me the benefit of the doubt and say, all right, man, why are you saying that? Right?
yeah,
Why not, realize that you're not that good?
right.
You're not that good because you're not taking a chance, a risk to go out there and become a better player by putting yourself in a position where you're competing against the best of the best in Europe. It
Yeah,
fucking
man.
pisses me off, dude.
Yeah, I don't. The last thing I want you here is to pop a nerve or get pissed off here. But yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of, we're hitting the hour mark. We kind of hit on the topics we kind of wanted to hit.
Yeah.
There's definitely, I'll leave it with this. I hope what happened at the World Cup this year is, or last year 2022, is able to help implement some changes, some much needed changes. You know, I'm looking at the website for the Leagues Cup right now. It looks like they're going into this thing full throttle, nonstop. They're sold on it. That's not how that's not what we want. That's not how they're going to grow as a league, or change as a league. And like we said, everything is connected here, and without winning back the national fan, without overvaluing their players, letting them go to Europe, the, the plethora of problems we discussed today, um, this might just be the beginning of the downward spiral for the three. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully we're wrong. Hopefully it's able to change for us. But time will tell. Hopefully, at least we'll be playing Copa America next year. So, but
Hopefully, man. But it's I don't know what else to say, dude. Like, honestly, I just really hope that the young kids out there who are looking up to Alexis Vega realize that he's a fucking loser. Um, that they don't take Jesus Gallardo's words as the only truth. It's okay if you wanna make your career in Liga MX. I'm not gonna blame you for that. But if you do have the chance to go to Europe, take a
take it.
risk.
Hmm.
Because yeah, most likely your life is gonna be set when you come back. Like you make sure that you put gratification, uh like you postpone gratification, sorry, and work your ass off for uh for becoming a better asset of your national team, because you're gonna come back when you're 27, 28, and you're gonna be making big bucks, dude, and that's when it really matters, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like yeah, I'm
Yeah. We'll leave it at that, man. That's good. That's a good closing there. Uh, Make sure, fellas, if you guys are still with us after our rant here, be sure to check us out in the next episode. We're going to be discussing the other side of the Rio Bravo, the Rio Grande River, the MLS side of things. The MLS has its own set of problems, many similar problems. It being a closed system, no promotion, no relegation, but it's also got a couple things that it's doing a little better than Liga MX. We constantly see MLS players being exported at a young age to Europe, and so we're going to be discussing, the problems with MLS. Granted, successes with MLS. Granted, Adrian nor myself are uh, crazy followers of MLS. We
true.
we know every couple teams here or there, but we can't say we watch every match or we follow everything. So we'll give our take on that. But yeah,
Yeah,
Adrian, it was great having you on. No filter unleashed. So please go drink some water, cool down a little bit. Um,
will do, man.
before before we leave, man, where can our listeners find us?
They can always find us at on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter at Puro Pinche Gol. Again, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications.
Sounds good, man. Yeah. Make sure to follow us on your social media of choice. And Adrian, it's been another honor with you, man. See you next week, brother.
Always a pleasure, dude.
Likewise, man. I'll talk to
Take
you
it
later.
easy.
Later,
See ya.
bro.